Hi, I'm Anthony Carlo for North Avenue Nation Sports. The NFL has been under fire recently with the recent domestic violence cases of New Rochelle's own Ray Rice, who was seen dragging his wife out of an elevator after he clocked her in the face, and star running back for the Minnesota Vikings, Adrian Peterson, who was accused of child abuse after he was whipping his son with a tree branch. Joining me today is the chairperson of the Criminal Justice Department here at Iona College, Dr. Cathryn Lavery. Dr. Lavery, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you, Anthony, for having me.
First off, I want to ask you, what does this do to society? The fact that the NFL, originally with their original punishment, allowed these players to be walking around, continuing their daily routines, what does that do to our society?
Well, I think one of the first things we need to kind of set out there and put out there is domestic violence or intimate partner violence has existed and has been looked at, especially from the perspective of criminal justice, in sports for the past 30 years. This is not something new. The rates, in fact, are very similar to the rates that were found 15, 20 years ago. Nothing has changed. I think one of the things that has changed is now we are more open in society with social media, with video surveillance, with people taking pictures with their phones, with that. So it's a little easier to get caught. We've also taken it out of the bedroom area, so to speak. And women, I believe many women have become much more vocal in terms of Survivor Alliance and coming forward. So there's a little bit more of a safety net for women to have a voice on the subject. However, what it does speak to is that even though we know these rates haven't changed, there has not been much effort to curtail what has been going on. And in addition, we've also kept up with a culture. And a culture within professional sports that has sheltered them, that has protected them from criminal prosecutions, that has protected them from civil liabilities, and basically protected them from accountability of their actions. And so I think what happened with the Ray Rice case in particular is here you had the NFL come out with a sentence and say, okay, we're going to give you a 2-game suspension. And then, of course, somebody was able to do the research and say, well, wait a second, 2 games for hurting somebody you supposedly love. You get 8 games if you're smoking a small amount of marijuana. So where does that play? And then, of course, social media took over, and it became more of an uproar. The issue of the video getting released later, the full on-set video, that has come under fire because the idea is did the NFL have it beforehand? When it was given to the police, had it been leaked to them, or did they have somehow, through Ray Rice's attorney, been able to see it? And then to come out and say, well, we're suspending you for it. It's kind of like putting the cart before the horse. They weren't dealing with it properly initially, and now they're trying to do making it up. And that's one of the biggest problems. And it also sends a very bad message to the public.
So essentially it looks like we're caught. We're caught, we didn't take care of it.
We got caught with our pants down, and now we've got to fix it. And so how are we going to fix it? Let's do a piecemeal. And, you know, I think it's very interesting, and I don't know if you're aware because this just came out about an hour ago, you know, even the White House has come out and the Department of Justice, and they're now issuing $2 million, a little more than $2 million, for domestic violence prevention, because they're saying in light of what has happened over the course of the past month or year, the problem is we've had this going on for years. So, I mean, for somebody who works in this area and who has seen the statistics overall, it's not a shock to me how this has been dealt with. It hasn't surprised me at all. I'm a little surprised at how everybody is trying to play catch up with it, because I think, as I said before, it sends a terrible message to men and women.
You speak about terrible message, and not only is this affecting society, but I think it's affecting the NFL as well.
Yes.
And the face of the NFL. Does it appear that almost their choice to go about this has been advocating for criminal acts?
Well, I don't know how much it's really hurting the NFL. From what I understand, the recent feedback they've gotten is that NFL viewership is still up. Merchandise sales are still way up. People are still going and watching the games. I think the public is smarter than when we give them credit for sometimes, and I think they know it has to do with acts of individual people. The problem is we're finding a concentrated group in this area. If you look at national domestic violence statistics, I mean, overall there was a study done about 4 or 5 years ago, which looked at about 39% of professional and college sportsmen arrests. And 40% of all professional and college sports to be arrested for intimate partner violence and sexual assault. That's a huge number.
Yeah.
And so we've known what the statistics are. And yet 4 or 5 years ago, we were still going to the games, we were still buying the merchandise. I don't think that's going to change. So I think they're looking at it at the head of the NFL. I think the coaches have handled it in a better perspective in terms of their statements and their hope of zero tolerance. But the point is they're not that powerful in this. You can't police them all the time.
Speaking about the way that they got caught with their pants down, if you will, Roger Goodell, NFL commissioner,
Yes.
he had said originally that the police report with the Ray Rice case particularly, that it wasn't enough for him to begin, I guess, a procedure of going on to punish Ray Rice for what he had done. And I think what that brings to many people's minds is that a way for him to cover himself up by saying that the police report wasn't enough, or did he actually need something else at that point to take the next step? He
didn't. You have to look at the domestic violence law, basically. And I can't speak for what Baltimore does, and what I'm not well versed on domestic violence law down there.
Right.
But I know if we look at other states, a police report serves as enough. There are many states in which the idea, and I can allude this with sexual assault in New York, if a woman claims to be sexually assaulted or a man claims to be sexually assaulted, we look at that as evidence enough to do an investigation, period. And that goes criminally. So I don't know what he needed in terms of additional evidence. You really need to look at the complaint. And a police report that says that there was evidence from a video, which the police report had that in it. There's evidence from a video, even if he claims he didn't see the video, that was enough to level it to issues of probable cause and investigation. That should have been enough at least to suspend him.
Right.
Again, it's the message that's sent. But we've had that. I mean, if you look at certain cases around the country, we had a case 2 years ago where a woman claimed a sexual assault by a college, I think it was baseball student who had won a major award. They didn't even do the investigation until after the season was over.
Right.
I mean, so that's what we're looking at, is we're looking at who's taking the initiative and how to do it. So yes, I concur with you. It was a way of him to say, what am I supposed to do? When the truth is he has a lot of lawyers who are around him. I'm sure many of them probably would have said, you need to do something fast.
Right. Now the commissioner, he recently has put former FBI Director Robert Mueller on this case to investigate the handling of the Rice case. Of course, I'm sure you've heard that Mueller is now working for a law firm that has had connections with the NFL, and because of that, people are wondering, is this some sort of conflict of interest that the man that Goodell is putting on the case is working for a law firm that has had connections with the NFL? Goodell, he actually denies it. He says that there is no conflict of interest because he himself, Mueller, the former FBI director, has never worked for the league.
And I have great respect for Mueller. His work at the FBI is tremendous. I believe there's a conflict of interest. I believe any association, even peripheral association with the NFL at all, would constitute a conflict of interest. What they really needed to get was either an advocacy group or law firm to do this type of investigation, somebody from the outside with absolutely no connections or investments, and for it to be seen as something real. I mean, I think it's commendable that he has volunteered to do it. But I think in the long view, if we really want to look at an issue of transparency and we want to look and open up the books and the investigations as to what's going on, you really need to take a second look at who they're bringing on to be the attorney to lead the investigation.
And Goodell, he also had said that the NFL has always been completely reliant on criminal investigation to obtain information. He said that they've always been cautious of interfering with that criminal investigation. And now they may have to change their course of action. That is what he's saying the NFL needs to do. What do you feel about that? Is he basically saying that criminal investigation is to blame here in this whole incident, with particularly the videos that had been discovered, that it was the criminal investigation fault for not being able to discover that other half of the video before a quicker time?
Well, I think, I honestly think you have to let the police do their jobs. And I believe if there is an initial report that says that there is significant evidence, or at least existing evidence of some sort of intimate partner violence where somebody has been hurt, that's what you need to take at face value. I truly believe in our justice system. If that somebody is innocent, then we need to hold that to a very high standard with due process rights. And of course, they are deserving of a trial and they are deserving of the adjudication process. However, we have to look at protection of the victim. Right. And unfortunately in our society, we tend to scrutinize the victim more, especially when dealing with perpetrators that they may have a relationship with or some sort of contact with who they know. Again, I cite some of the recent statistics that exist now. The CDC has just come out a couple of weeks ago with an intense study they did 3 years on the issue of sexual violence in the United States, which included stalking, intimate partner violence. We're dealing with over 25 million Americans that have been in some way or form, male and female, violated in some way. We definitely have this as a social problem and possibly, I would think, a public health problem in our society. So I think placing blame on the police and that we need to be more cautious in who's doing what, there shouldn't be any interference in a police investigation. And unfortunately, the way investigations are, they sometimes take time. They get delayed significantly, especially by people who are suspects in or persons of interest in a case. And I think for him to be changing the tune and alluding to the fact that something went wrong during the investigation was not over when these videos were released. Right. Let's be honest,
Right.
We're still ongoing.
Right.
And the police are very aware of what happens during the course of an intimate partner violence. In fact, they're one of the hardest cases to have to work on.
Right.
Because you're usually dealing with somebody who has been victimized repeatedly and who has come under so much psychological terrorism and fear from being with that person. They're not really willing to help in a case. In fact, they become more like hostile witnesses in a case, and that's something that's a terrible hurdle for police officers to climb over, and he's very aware of that, I'm sure. Mm-hmm.
Dr. Lavery, thank you so much for your time today.
You're very welcome, Anthony. Thank you for having me.
For North Avenue Nation Sports, I'm Anthony Carlo.